The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the sound of over 100 alien delegates speaking in hushed, conspiratorial tones. The atmosphere was thick with arrogance, the kind that came from species who had long forgotten what it was like to be afraid. Seated in the grandest chair at the center of the circular chamber was High Chancellor Vurock, his elongated features contorted into an expression of mild irritation. The matter before them was trivial, at least in his view. A minor problem, an inconsequential insect that needed to be swatted. "The humans are growing bolder," one delegate muttered, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with distaste. "They refuse to acknowledge the authority of the Galactic Council. They resist our subtle governance. If left unchecked, they could become problematic." Vurock sighed. He did not fear humans. They were a lesser species, prone to emotional outbursts, guided more by instinct than intellect. But he understood the necessity of control. The Council had spent centuries shaping the order of the galaxy, ensuring that every civilization knew its place. Earth, despite its relative obscurity, had proven stubborn. "The solution is simple," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We remove the head of this resistance before it grows into something uncontrollable. I propose an assassination." There were murmurs of approval, nods of agreement. Assassinations were an elegant solution. A single, precise strike, and the problem would be neutralized before it could escalate. "And who is this target?" asked a broad-shouldered delegate from the Zelran Dominion. Vurock activated the holographic interface before him, bringing up a rotating image of a human female. Designation: Amanda Jones. Location: Earth, North America. Status: civilian. A few delegates exchanged uncertain glances. Killing a civilian was not standard procedure, but Earth did not operate within standard parameters. Amanda Jones had become a symbol, a unifying force that resisted the Council's quiet machinations. She was the wife of a high-ranking military official, a woman whose mere presence commanded loyalty. If she fell, humanity's fragile resolve might crumble. Vurock gestured toward a shadowed alcove on the far side of the chamber. From it emerged a group of figures, clad in dark armor, that seemed to shift and distort the light around them. The Zarthic assassins. Silent, efficient, utterly ruthless. "Your mission is simple," Vurock said. "Eliminate the target. Make it clean." The lead assassin, a towering figure with a segmented carapace, bowed his head. "It will be done." Earth at night was a spectacle unlike any other in the galaxy. From the sky, its cities glowed like constellations wrapped around the curve of the planet, pulsing with the unrelenting energy of its inhabitants. For the Zarthic, this was a primitive world, one still burdened by gravity, atmosphere, and the ceaseless chaos of organic life. The assassins descended undetected, their ships cloaking technology, rendering them invisible to human eyes. They landed in a secluded area just outside their target's last known location, a small coffee shop in Brooklyn. Navigating the streets was trickier than they had anticipated. Humans were unpredictable creatures, their urban landscapes cluttered with illogical pathways and erratic movement. As they passed through a crowded street, one assassin nearly triggered his energy weapon when a human in a leather jacket shouted at another from across the road, "Hey, Tony, you still owe me for that pizza last week." The assassin tensed, analyzing the phrase for threats, but another team member signaled for calm. Just human nonsense. They reached the cafe without incident. Through the glass windows, they could see her, Amanda Jones. She sat alone, sipping something from a ceramic cup, her attention fixed on a book in her hands. She looked unremarkable. No visible weapons, no signs of enhanced combat ability. A soft target. The lead assassin signaled to his team. They moved swiftly, entering the cafe with mechanical precision. Patrons barely had time to register their presence before the strike commenced. A single, controlled shot from a molecular disruptor reduced Amanda Jones to nothing but a shimmering residue, the energy of the blast contained to avoid collateral damage. It was over. The assassins turned and left without a word. News of the assassination spread faster than any virus. Within hours, every major human network broadcasted the footage. Grainy surveillance images of alien figures executing a woman in broad daylight. Governments scrambled to control the chaos, but the truth could not be hidden. Then came the revelation. The assassins had never verified their target. Amanda Jones was not just some figurehead. She was the wife of General Alexander Jones, the Supreme Commander of Earth's United Defense Forces. When the message reached Jones, he was sitting in a diner, a half-eaten burger in front of him. The television above the counter played the breaking news, the images freezing him in place. The waitress, oblivious to the gravity of the moment, refilled his coffee. Jones put his cup down. The air around him grew still, a heavy silence pressing against the room. He reached for his phone, dialing a number that had never been used outside of training exercises. "This is Jones," he said. A voice on the other end responded, hesitant. "Sir, they killed my wife." A pause. A deep inhale. "Yes, sir. Orders." Jones exhaled, slow and deliberate. "I want every fleet on standby, every asset mobilized. We're going to war." The line went dead. In that moment, Earth changed. Across the planet, military installations roared to life. Satellites adjusted their positions, and hidden warships powered up for the first time in history. The Galactic Council had made an error, a grave, unforgivable error, and soon they would learn the meaning of human vengeance. The message went out in less than an hour. It was broadcast through encrypted military channels, relayed through quantum-linked satellites, and delivered in clipped, unyielding words. No rhetoric, no negotiation. A simple command. Total war. On every continent, in every classified installation, in the deep silence of orbital stations once hidden in the shadows of the Moon and Mars, Earth's military forces stirred. Warships, long kept under wraps to maintain the illusion of humanity's inferiority, powered up with a synchronized hum. Automated drones, experimental railgun platforms, and kinetic bombardment arrays locked onto their targets. This was not a declaration. It was an execution order. Inside the Earth Defense Command bunker, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Alexander Jones stood at the center of the war room, his face carved from stone. He had not spoken more than necessary since receiving the news. His officers watched him carefully, knowing that beneath his impassive exterior, something volcanic churned. A live feed from the White House flickered on the main screen. The president's expression was tight, controlled, but Jones could see the barely concealed fury behind her eyes. "Are you certain about this course of action, General?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Jones's voice was calm. "Madam President, they came to our world, walked into our cities, and killed an innocent woman in front of our people. They didn't expect consequences." His hands clenched behind his back. "They're about to learn what human consequences look like." The president exhaled slowly. "God help them." "God's not coming," Jones said. "We are." Across the planet, human ingenuity was turned toward a singular goal: vengeance. Civilian factories shifted production to war materials overnight. The stock markets plunged and then surged as defense companies worked at an inhuman pace. Humanity was uniting in a way that had not been seen in its history. The first strike was elegant in its brutality. The Galactic Council's relay stations, floating monoliths of smug superiority, blinked out one by one, their systems overtaken by viruses written by caffeine-fueled programmers in underground labs. The same humans who had once spent their time cracking digital rights management on video games now rewrote the rules of interstellar combat. Galactic warships stationed near the Sol system found their own weapons turning against them as their navigation controls went dark. Entire fleets lost power, drifting helplessly in the void, their captains unable to comprehend how a primitive species had bypassed their security. By the time the first human warships jumped into Council-controlled space, the war had already been won in the digital realm. Now it was time for the physical reckoning. Jones's fleet did not approach with caution. There were no attempts at stealth, no diplomatic overtures. The humans arrived in force, moving with a purpose that defied the cold, calculated warfare of the Council's history. This was not a political dispute. This was a species showing its fangs. The Galactic Council's first defensive line, a ring of battle stations orbiting the mid-rim worlds, had never been breached in the entirety of its existence. It was a symbol of control, of the Council's belief in its own untouchability. It lasted exactly 7 minutes and 42 seconds against the humans. The first station went up in a fiery blossom as a kinetic slug the size of a school bus tore through its core at relativistic speeds. There was no energy signature, no warning, just a sudden, cataclysmic realization that the humans were fighting by an entirely different set of rules. Alien commanders scrambled to adapt. They deployed their own fleets, sending thousands of warships in defensive formations, expecting the kind of battle they were used to, one of maneuvering, of shields and measured attacks. They expected skirmishes, calculated engagements. The humans did not oblige them. Jones's fleet did not slow. They did not spread out or engage in careful, tactical maneuvers. They barreled through enemy formations like a sledgehammer against glass, using brute force physics, where the Council relied on energy fields. Human warships, reinforced to withstand the crushing forces of planetary gravity wells, tore through alien vessels like a buzzsaw through paper. Council admirals screamed orders into their comms, trying to comprehend how ships one-third their size were outgunning them, outmaneuvering them, annihilating them. They did not understand. Humanity had spent centuries waging war on itself. It had burned continents, cracked its own atmosphere, and still survived. Where the Council's fleets fought with doctrine and discipline, humans fought with rage. They did not fight for conquest, or even for survival. They fought because they were angry, and it was this anger that made them unstoppable. Aboard the UNS Retribution, Jones watched the battle unfold from the bridge. His officers moved with crisp efficiency, their actions precise, but there was a fire in their eyes that no alien strategist could ever quantify. A transmission request appeared on his console, an open channel from the nearest Council flagship. Jones accepted it without hesitation. The alien's face was panicked, sweat glistening on its brow. "This is Admiral Zurash of the 6th Fleet," he said, his voice laced with desperation. "We wish to negotiate a ceasefire." Jones tilted his head slightly. "A ceasefire? Yes. This conflict is—" Jones cut him off. "No." The alien's mouth opened, closed. You will not even hear our terms." "There are no terms," Jones said. "You killed my wife. You killed an innocent. And now you're learning what that means." The alien made a strangled noise. We did not realize." Jones's voice was steady, cold. "You didn't care to." He ended the transmission. Moments later, the Council flagship was reduced to a rapidly expanding debris field. The humans did not stop. They pushed forward, deeper into Council territory, their momentum fueled by fury. World after world fell before them, not because of superior numbers, but because the aliens simply could not fathom how to fight them. Humans did not retreat when outgunned. They did not negotiate when wronged. They avenged. As Jones stood on the bridge, watching yet another planet surrender, an officer approached him. "Sir," she said, "we're receiving another transmission. It's from the Council itself. The High Chancellor is requesting an emergency summit." Jones stared at the screen for a long moment. He knew what was coming next. The Council would beg. They would try to reason with him. They would offer reparations, treaties, whatever they thought might appease him. It would not be enough. "Tell them I'll meet with them," he said finally. The officer blinked. "Sir." Jones turned, his expression unreadable. "Tell them I'll meet with them in person." The officer hesitated, then nodded. As the transmission was relayed, Jones stepped away from a bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He had no intention of listening to their pleas. He was going to look them in the eye, and then he was going to end them. The Galactic Council chamber, once a symbol of order and supreme governance, was now a scene of disarray. Panic rippled through the gathered delegates like a virus, infecting even the most composed among them. The massive circular hall, designed to be an architectural embodiment of unity, now felt like a tomb closing in around them. Murmurs turned to shouting. Accusations flew across the room like stray projectiles. High Chancellor Vurok sat rigid in his grand chair, the once magnificent aura of authority now failing to conceal the unease behind his narrow, deep-set eyes. His elongated fingers drummed against the ornate armrests, a habit he had not indulged in for over a century. He despised inefficiency. He despised disorder. And yet, for the first time in his lengthy tenure, he found himself drowning in both. A massive screen dominated the front of the chamber, displaying a live feed from the outer colonies. Once prosperous planets now burned, their skies streaked with the remnants of smoldering warships. The enemy, the humans, moved with an aggression that defied all logic. There was no hesitation in their strategy, no diplomatic overtures for surrender. The humans did not demand negotiation. They demanded retribution. They have taken Valtrex for. A tremulous voice cut through the din, belonging to a frail-looking delegate from the Kesari Dominion. His large, dark eyes blinked rapidly, as though each blink could erase the horrors flashing across the screens. They struck with such efficiency, there was no warning, no time for evacuation. They did not take it, another delegate corrected, her voice thin and bitter. They destroyed it. Silence fell over the chamber, each delegate absorbing the weight of that single word. Vurok inhaled deeply through his slit-like nostrils. The situation had escalated beyond what anyone had anticipated. It had been assumed that humanity, when faced with an overwhelming display of force, would surrender, that they would fall in line as so many other species had before them. Their emotional nature made them unpredictable, yes, but predictable in their fear. And yet, fear was not what they had found in humanity. They had found something far worse. Vurok's gaze drifted to the sole surviving commander of the outer defenses, a battered and exhausted Krellan admiral named Sothrax. His war-torn uniform was scorched at the edges, and his three eyes, usually a dull silver, now flickered with something close to madness. "You saw them up close," Vurok said, his voice measured but firm. "You fought them. Tell me, Admiral, what makes these humans so dangerous?" Sothrax lifted his head slowly, his mandibles clicking together. He seemed to struggle with a question, as though articulating the horror of what he had witnessed was a battle in itself. "They do not fight like us," he said at last. "They do not calculate risk the way we do. We engage in war with logic, strategy, caution. We weigh every move." He exhaled sharply, a shudder running through his broad shoulders. "The humans do not." A murmur swept through the chamber. Sothrax's fingers clenched into trembling fists. "I watched them sacrifice entire ships just to create an opening. They did not hesitate. They did not mourn. They simply adapted. Every loss fueled their momentum. Every battle made them fiercer." The murmur turned into a collective shudder of realization. The Council had been accustomed to wars of patience, conflicts fought over decades, waged through slow, calculated engagements. But humanity had no interest in patience. Vurok leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "You are telling me they fight as though they have nothing to lose?" Sothrax's eyes burned with something between terror and awe. "I am telling you, Chancellor, that they fight as though they have already won." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices blending into a cacophony of dread. The humans were an existential threat. They were a disease, an infection that spread across the galaxy with terrifying speed. If something was not done, the Council would fall. Vurok raised a hand, silencing the outcry. "We must sue for peace." A wave of disbelief crashed through the room. "Peace," scoffed a thick-bodied representative from the Torquor. His four muscular arms crossed over his barrel-like chest. "You believe these barbarians will accept peace? They have no desire for diplomacy." Vurok's sharp gaze cut through him. "Then what do you propose? That we continue fighting a war we are clearly losing?" "We have ruled this galaxy for millennia," another delegate interjected. "We cannot allow ourselves to be." Vurok slammed a fist onto the armrest, the rare display of anger sending a ripple of shock through the assembly. We allowed ourselves to believe that ruling the galaxy made us infallible. That was our first mistake. Our second was underestimating the resolve of a species that has never accepted its place beneath another's boot. A tense silence followed. The chamber's main screen flickered. A new transmission had arrived. The room tensed as the words "incoming message" from Earth flashed in bold red letters. Vurok exhaled slowly. Put it through. The screen went black for a moment before flickering back to life. The figure that appeared was unmistakable. General Alexander Jones. He did not wear the polished, decorative uniform of a military leader addressing a governing body. His attire was simple, functional. A soldier who had stepped off the battlefield for this moment. His face, rugged and lined with the weight of loss, betrayed no emotion beyond a quiet, seething fury. For a long moment, Jones said nothing. He let the silence stretch, let them feel it. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "You killed my wife." The words hung in the air, heavier than any decree the council had ever issued. Jones leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking onto Vurok's with the unrelenting force of a predator who had already decided to strike. "We are done talking." A nervous shift ran through the room. Jones tilted his head slightly, as though considering something. "I was going to give you an ultimatum," he said. "But I realized something." A slow, humorless smile touched his lips. "You don't deserve one." The screen went black. For a moment, nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Then the alarms began to blare. A trembling aide stumbled into the chamber, his face pale. "High Chancellor," he gasped. "The human fleet, they're here." Vurok closed his eyes. The war was over. The slaughter was about to begin. The Galactic Council chamber, once an untouchable bastion of power, lay in ruin. The once pristine marble floors were now cracked and littered with debris. The golden banners bearing the sigil of the council, symbols of absolute authority, hung in tatters, some reduced to smoldering embers. The air reeked of ozone, scorched circuitry, and something heavier, the unmistakable scent of fear. General Alexander Jones stepped over the shattered remnants of a grand ornamental pillar, his boots leaving deliberate imprints in the dust. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the silent hall, each one a measured beat of finality. Behind him, human soldiers stood at attention, their armor streaked with the soot of war, their rifles slung but ready. The battle was won. What remained was the reckoning. At the center of the chamber, on what was once an elevated dais of supreme authority, High Chancellor Vurok sat slumped in his grand chair. His robes, once immaculate, were torn and dirted. His elongated fingers, which once commanded empires with a mere gesture, now gripped the armrests in silent defeat. His once proud gaze had dulled, the weight of reality having crushed whatever illusions of superiority he once held. Jones approached slowly, stopping just a few feet away. He let the silence stretch, let Vurok feel it. The Chancellor's breathing was shallow, his three eyes flickering between Jones and the human soldiers who now occupied the most powerful seat in the galaxy. The irony was suffocating. "This is how it ends, then," Vurok said at last, his voice hoarse. There was no anger in it, no pride, just the resignation of a man watching the foundations of his world crumble beneath him. Jones said nothing for a long moment, simply watching the alien before him. Then, with a quiet sigh, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, unremarkable object. A simple silver locket. He held it up between two fingers, letting it catch the dim light filtering through the shattered ceiling. "You know what this is?" Jones asked, his voice quiet but carrying through the dead chamber. Vurok's gaze flickered toward it, his expression unreadable. A human trinket. Jones pressed a small latch, and the locket clicked open, revealing a tiny, faded photograph. A woman's face, smiling, laughing, the kind of expression that had once held an entire world together. "My wife carried this everywhere," Jones said. She said it reminded her of what was important, of what was worth fighting for. His fingers tightened around the locket, the metal cool against his skin. You took her from me. Vurock swallowed, his throat working around the weight of words he would never be able to say. Apologies would mean nothing. Regret even less. Jones snapped the locket shut. And now I've taken everything from you. Vurock exhaled shakily. Do you truly believe this changes anything? His voice, though weak, held the ghost of defiance. You have burned worlds, razed cities, crushed fleets. But power does not last, General. The galaxy is vast. There will always be another force to rise against you. Jones's expression remained impassive. Let them try. Vurock gave a bitter chuckle. And what will you do now, human? You are the ruler of a broken empire. A conqueror with no more enemies left to fight. Jones's gaze remained unreadable as he took a step forward. I don't want your empire. He gestured to the ruined hall, to the vacant seats where once mighty rulers had cowered before him. This was never about conquest. It was about sending a message. Vurock frowned. A message. Jones nodded. He turned slightly, glancing at one of his soldiers, who handed him a sleek datapad. Jones tapped the screen, bringing up a live transmission. Across the vast reaches of space, the broadcast was being transmitted to every surviving Council world, to every species that had once looked to the Council as the ultimate authority. Jones lifted the device and spoke, his voice unwavering. This is General Alexander Jones of Earth. Your leaders are defeated. Your fleets are in ruins. Your empire no longer exists. Let this be a warning. His grip on the datapad tightened. Humanity is not a species you can intimidate. We are not prey to be hunted. We do not forget, and we do not forgive. He lowered the datapad and ended the transmission. Vurock let out a slow breath, his eyes dark with comprehension. You wanted fear. Jones met his gaze without hesitation. I wanted respect. His voice turned colder. And if fear is the only way your kind understand it, then yes. I wanted fear. Silence settled between them. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, Jones turned and began walking away. Vurock's voice stopped him. What will you do with me? Jones paused, but he did not turn back. You're going to live, Chancellor. He let the words hang before continuing. You're going to watch as your name becomes a curse among your own kind. As history remembers you not as a ruler, but as the man who brought ruin upon his people. Vurock's fingers curled into fists. Jones took a final step forward, then stopped. And when the next war comes, when some other species thinks they can do to us what you did, he finally turned his head, just enough for Vurock to see the faint smirk that didn't reach his eyes. They'll remember what happened to you. Then he left, his soldiers following in silent formation. Outside, the ruins of the galactic capital stretched in every direction, a testament to the folly of underestimating humanity. Smoke curled into the sky, mingling with the twilight glow of distant fires. But amidst the devastation, something new was taking root. Humans moved among the wreckage, not as conquerors, but as something else entirely. Engineers were already setting up infrastructure, not for occupation, but for stabilization. Communications channels, medical stations, emergency supplies. The fleet had come to destroy, but now it remained to rebuild. Humanity had won, but they had no interest in ruling. They had come to settle a debt, and now that it was paid, they would leave. Jones stepped onto the command deck of the UNS Retribution, his warship orbiting the broken planet below. The stars stretched out before him, vast and endless. He closed his eyes for a moment, the exhaustion settling in his bones. A small metallic object rested in his palm. He opened the locket again. The photo inside remained unchanged. The woman in the picture was still smiling, still frozen in that moment before the world had taken her away. Jones exhaled and shut it gently. Behind him, his second-in-command approached. Sir, the fleet is awaiting your orders. Jones nodded slowly. Set course for home. The officer hesitated. And the Council worlds? Jones's gaze remained fixed on the stars. They'll remember. His voice was quiet, final. They'll always remember. The engines rumbled beneath them as the fleet prepared to depart. The war was over. The lesson would last forever.